I started asking myself something that felt simple at first, but wouldn't leave me alone. Is faith actually one thing? Because every time I listened to people argue about faith, religion, belief, or meaning, it didn't sound like they were disagreeing about the same thing. It sounded like they were talking about completely different experiences and using the same word. So I slowed down and tried to look at what people actually mean when they say faith. What I realized is this: faith isn't a single thing. It's more like a field. It has direction, it has weight, and it shows up in more than one way at the same time, whether we notice it or not. When I started paying attention, three aspects kept showing up everywhere: across religions, across philosophies, even in people who say they don't have faith at all. The first is internal faith. This is the meaning side of things. What I believe, how I explain the world, what I think matters and why. This is where doctrines live: worldviews, philosophies, scientific explanations, religious stories. Every system has this layer, even the ones that say they don't. If you have a story about how reality works and what gives life meaning, you're already operating here. The second aspect is embodied faith. This is the lived part. Not what I say I believe, but what I actually do. How I treat people, what my habits look like, what I practice, what I sacrifice for, how I respond when things get hard. You can see this everywhere too. Prayer, meditation, discipline, restraint. You can also see it outside religion. People live out values every day, even when they don't call them values. One thing I noticed pretty quickly is that a lot of people live a faith they'd never put into words. And a lot of people can explain their faith perfectly, but don't really live it. That gap matters. The third aspect is harder to name, but it's the one that keeps pulling everything else with it. Relational faith. Orientation. This is about direction. What I turn toward when I don't know what to do. What I trust when certainty falls apart. What I lean on when meaning breaks. This isn't belief, and it isn't behavior. It's alignment. Some people orient toward God, some toward truth, some toward progress, some toward self, some toward power, some toward fear. Everyone orients toward something. And over time, that orientation quietly shapes what we believe and how we live, whether we're aware of it or not. Here's where things started to click for me. Most faith systems don't fall apart because they're completely wrong. They fall apart because one of these aspects takes over and the others get ignored. When belief dominates, you get certainty without transformation. A lot of talking, a lot of arguing, very little change. When behavior dominates, you get action without grounding. Ritual without meaning. Moral performance. Burnout. And when orientation dominates without structure, you get drift. Good intentions. Spiritual language. No real coherence. You can see all of this everywhere. In religion, politics, in modern spirituality, in secular culture. What changed things for me was realizing that faith becomes stable not when one of these disappears, but when all three are actually facing the same direction. Not equal, aligned, meaning what I believe, how I live, and what I orient toward are pointing the same way. That way of looking at faith changed how I saw different religions and belief systems. Not as right versus wrong, not as competitors, but as systems that often do one of these things really well and struggle with the others. Some traditions are very strong on meaning, some on practice, some on relationship and orientation. And sometimes certain figures inside those traditions embody one aspect so clearly that we mistake that part for the whole thing. That didn't flatten faith for me. It clarified it. It also helped me understand why psychology, faith, and meaning can't stay completely separated, even when we try to keep them clean. They're all describing the same human being, just from different angles. So the question I have to keep asking myself isn't which system wins. It's this: which parts of my faith are actually alive and aligned, and which parts am I assuming are there without ever really looking?